You know, when you hear about all of the big-time MLB stadium renovations, all of the rumors, there's a ballpark that normally is absent from that talk, and that ballpark is Comerica Park. Today I'm going to be discussing what is the future of Comerica Park, opening 23 years ago, really receiving no big renovation. The only article I found when it came to a potential Comerica Park renovation was back all the way in 2018, where they talk about and they admit that, yes, the Detroit Tigers president has made remarks about potentially improving Comerica Park, possibly getting some type of major renovation. I'm going to discuss what that could be. But let me just say, when it comes to Comerica Park, when it opened all the way back in 2000, the fences, obviously a massive overkill, way too deep, and they've since moved the fences in from both left field and right center, and also center field, but they've done it in a way that's really sloppy. If you go look back at the early 2000s, before any of the fences got moved in, at Comerica Park, the bullpens were originally located in right field. They moved the bullpens to left field, effectively bringing the fences in significantly while leaving the original wall there. And you can see the original padded wall out in left field. And then this past offseason, they brought the fences in from center field, but they left the original fence out in center field with the full padding. So it's basically a double wall, kind of like one of those gimmick Little League things when the smaller kids come and play and they put up like a miniature fence in front of the actual fence. This is an MLB stadium, folks. We need to get a real renovation and actually fit these new fence dimensions. And then, of course, they've done this is the big problem I have now with some of these stadiums. In right center, they've got the dreaded yellow line where if the ball hits off the wall, it can technically still be a home run. They've also got that at Angel Stadium. It's really bad. It should not be happening at MLB Stadium. So I'll say when it comes to Comerica Park, certainly first and foremost, they need to custom fit their new fence dimensions. So that's a renovation that needs to happen. But when it comes to this stadium, not much gets talked about it. I mean, sure, they've gotten their new scoreboard. They've done a few things here and there. They've created different clubs. But when it comes to the seating outside of the bullpens being moved and seats being added where the previous bullpens were, nothing has really changed. Now, the other thing with this stadium, it does have a split upper deck. And when it comes to a potential renovation, my thought process would be that down the first base line, you can see the cutoff lowered upper deck section. I think they probably would consider, depending on what happens with Detroit. I mean, their attendance has been really bad, but they're also, I will give Detroit credit, they had good attendance in like 2014, 2015 with Verlander, Miguel Cabrera when he was in his prime, Victor Martinez, those kind of teams. They had good attendance then. So I would consider turning that entire area into a social space, like a standing room area, maybe with tables and, you know, decks stacked on top of each other. Also, you could put a bar out there. That's something that I think they should consider. And then when you look at their outfield configuration, the seating, it's just so bland. It is the same type of configuration as Chase Field, where it's just one giant, like, angled lower bowl on each side. In the center, I'll give them credit. I do like the batter's eye, but with the fence moved in, you do have, you know, the annoying double fence, which makes the center field batter's eye kind of more ugly just because I don't like looking at two different fences. But I will give them credit. I do like the greenery out in center field. That's a nice little touch there. But for Comerica Park, certainly they can do a number of different things in terms of a renovation. There hasn't been much talk in terms of it, but I would suspect, based off of everything we've been hearing, they would be one of the next teams to start pondering a potential big-time stadium renovation where they really do potentially alter the stadium. And you can see a rendering there. That's an exterior project that they were thinking about doing. I do not believe that got built, but I did see renderings on that. Now, as for Comerica Park, you can just look at its capacity. It's remained virtually the exact same since it opened in 2000, changing just very slightly. The only really, I mean, I wouldn't even consider it having big renovations. I don't consider moving fences in to be a renovation, but right now, Comerica Park's seen kind of as like a Chase Field. Although I will say, on a few different stadium rankings lists, people do like Comerica Park, but on most of them I've seen Comerica's like 22nd or 23rd, so it wouldn't surprise me if they tried for a renovation that probably would be around 200 million or 300 million, just based off of the current trend in MLB. I don't think they would threaten to move or anything like that, but this does seem like a reoccurring issue with the Brewers, with the White Sox now, and this would very likely be a renovation that would be partially funded by the taxpayers, unfortunately, based off of the owners' history in Detroit when it comes to paying for stadiums. They mainly use taxes, at least partially, for that. So I just wanted to give an update on Comerica Park, what I see for it in terms of its future. It's kind of become one of the more irrelevant parks in baseball. No one really seems to talk about it, and I do think that's mainly because there's really not any type of crazy feature about it. I mean, you could say the split upper deck, but that's also at Great American Ballpark. You could say maybe the brick, like, it's kind of hard to explain, but it has brick out in right center and left center field. That's kind of cool, and then a standing room area above it. I will say, if they really want to make it unique, what they need to do is make a more pronounced area above the right field lower section, almost maybe an overhang. Like, I would suggest maybe some type of restaurant area, or like, I would suggest maybe some type of restaurant with like a small section of seating, like maybe 7 or 8 rows back, and then a restaurant that kind of overhangs right above the lower bowl. That would really add a uniqueness to the ballpark, and you really wouldn't worry about enclosing the ballpark too much, considering the center field is wide open. You don't have to deal with a guaranteed rate field problem when you've got advertising. Yankee Stadium has the same issue, a bunch of advertising going on all throughout center field. This ballpark is wide open, and they just have the scoreboard above left field, which is fine. You're really not going to renovate that. That's there. That is what it is. But in my opinion, I would say possibly they could look at taking out some seats in that split upper deck section, turning that entire isolated section into a standing room, bar, social space area, and then possibly do something above the right field lower bowl, maybe with some type of overhang. That would be pretty cool, and that would really add a unique feature to Comerica Park. It does have a 35-year lease that has 6 10-year options, and the Tigers pay $1 a year until the options are exercised. So a 35-year lease, if that started in 2000 when the stadium opened, it would go through 2035. So what do they have, 12 more years on their lease? Another situation is Baltimore is in the last year of their lease, so it seems like they've still got a ways to go, and they also have 6 10-year options that they could exercise as well. I would not expect Detroit to be leaving anytime soon. They have been bad for multiple years. They've gone through a rebuild. They have been bad for what seems like multiple years, and the attendance is certainly suffering recently. They're third right now in the AL Central, so maybe they can turn it around a little bit. Riley Green hitting a little bit better. Torkelson, the #1 overall pick, also starting to hit. So, listen, the AL Central is an easy division. They could, for all we know, win it next year. I mean, technically, they can still win the AL Central this year, and maybe their attendance, if they make a run, gets up significantly. That's one of the things that we have seen with the Tigers. When they have a good team, they will average 25,000, 30,000 easily and be in the upper half of MLB in terms of that. The other problem and major drawback, it is very far north, Detroit, Michigan, so in April, it's brutal. There's going to be terrible attendance games. That's just how it is, unfortunately. And you're also going to have to deal with that. Late September, it's very mild. It's very nice. Especially nowadays, it does seem to be getting slightly warmer later into the seasons, but that is the current situation when it comes to Comerica Park. Again, the only thing that I saw, yes, they've done incremental, smaller renovations, but in terms of a real facelift, it kind of seems like this situation is similar to Chase Field, where they're at an influx. The only time they really referenced any type of major thing was back in 2018. 2018, and we haven't heard anything since. Maybe the pandemic really hurt a potential renovation to Comerica Park, but I would expect at some point, with it being 23 years old, I mean, at this point, it'd be more surprising if they just left the stadium as it is in the coming future, because this is kind of the shelf life where it gets a big renovation and it gets to be preserved for the next 15 to 20 years. The fact that it is over 2 decades old now. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.